When my daughter married, she walked down the aisle with the brightest smile I had ever seen on her face. The church lights made her look like she was glowing. Her dress flowed behind her in soft white waves, and for a moment, I forgot every hardship, every silent tear, and every lonely night I had lived through. She looked happy. She looked whole. And that was all I ever wanted for her. She did not know that I was still paying for her future in ways she could not imagine. She did not know that while her new life was beginning, a secret sat quietly in my heart, a secret worth more than $5,000 million, hidden in a country she had never even visited. I smiled when she walked past me. A soft, small smile. Not the kind of smile people show in pictures, but the kind a mother shows when she finally sees her child step into the world without fear. Most people at the wedding assumed I was proud. Some whispered that I was too calm for such a big day. A few thought that maybe I was overwhelmed. But none of them knew the truth. I was silent because I had carried a secret for so long that speaking felt strange. I had spent half my life building something no one knew about. Not my son Michael. Not my daughter Emily. Not even my late husband, Daniel. And on the day Emily married, I realized something I had never admitted out loud. I wasn't hiding my wealth from my family. I was hiding my pain. It wasn't the money. It was the memories tied to it. It was the history, the sacrifices, the wounds that never fully healed. As the ceremony started, I stood there in the second row, not the first, because that space was meant for her father. His picture sat on the chair, framed with roses. I touched the frame lightly before sitting down, whispering, "You would have been proud of her, Daniel." My hands trembled, but not because I was nervous. They trembled because I wished he were there to share this moment, to carry half the burden I had carried alone. Emily never asked why I chose not to walk her down the aisle. She assumed it was tradition. She assumed it was respect for her father. She assumed many things. But the real reason was much simpler. I felt like a guest in my own family. It wasn't always this way. Once, my house was filled with laughter, noise, and the smell of fresh cornbread every Sunday. Once, I was the center of everything. Once, my children believed I could fix any broken thing in their lives. That changed slowly. Quietly. Almost without anyone noticing, except me. Standing there at her wedding, watching her soft brown hair curled so neatly, watching her eyes shine in the warm light, watching her new life unfold. I felt a small ache inside me. A soft ache. The kind that comes with love and loss mixed together. Because even though she was mine, I wasn't sure if I still belonged. And still, she had no idea who I truly was. She didn't know about the land overseas. She didn't know about the business I built in secret. She didn't know about the sacrifices I made in silence. She didn't know about the nights I cried alone after Daniel passed away, wondering how I would survive with 2 small children and no support. I didn't tell her. I didn't tell anyone. And maybe that was the beginning of everything that followed. On that day, the day my daughter married, I realized something important. Sometimes the biggest secrets are not hidden in bank accounts, documents, or property. Sometimes they are hidden in the heart. Buried under years of trying to protect the people you love. As the priest began the ceremony, I folded my hands on my lap. The soft music filled the church. The flowers smelled fresh and sweet. Everyone leaned forward, waiting for the moment the bride and groom would say their vows. And I sat there thinking about the secret no one knew. Thinking about the day it would finally come out. Thinking about how it would change everything. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself. Maybe one day she'll understand why I did what I did. But deep down, a part of me feared the day she would find out. Because the truth, even the gentle truth, can break a family apart. My family, my past, and the quiet foundation of everything. My name is Linda Parker. I am 58 years old. I live in a small town in North Carolina, in a house that has seen more memories than people realize. A house where my children grew up, where my husband took his last breath, and where my own story started to change in ways I never expected. My late husband, Daniel, was a kind man. Quiet. Strong. A person who kept his word even when it cost him a little piece of himself. He worked as a mechanic at a local shop, and though we didn't have much money in those early years, we had love. We had laughter. We had a little world of our own. We had 2 children. Michael, our firstborn, came 5 years after we married. Emily came 3 years later. Michael was the strong one. A boy who took responsibility even when he was too young to do so. Emily was the soft one, always gentle, always looking for comfort in my arms. I thought we would stay like that forever, the 4 of us, safe in our small home, growing old together. But life does not follow our plans. It follows its own path. It was after Emily turned 12 that Daniel started getting sick. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It was slow. A cough here. A pain there. A tiredness he brushed off with a smile. The doctors said it was serious. Daniel said he would fight it. And I said nothing, because my heart was already breaking. For 2 years, I watched him fade. For 2 years, I watched my children try to stay strong. For 2 years, I learned what it meant to carry a family alone. The night Daniel passed away, the house felt colder. Quieter. Empty. Michael sat on the porch with his head in his hands. Emily fell asleep next to me, tears still wet on her cheeks. And I held both of them close, promising myself I would give them a future. A strong one. A safe one. A future that Daniel would be proud of. I just didn't know how to do it yet. That night, after everyone else slept, I went into the living room and knelt beside Daniel's empty chair. I touched the worn-out armrest and whispered, "I'll take care of them, Daniel. I promise you. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes." Those words shaped the next 20 years of my life. How I built a secret life without meaning to. A year after Daniel's passing, a distant relative from my mother's side contacted me from overseas. His name was Richard Hale, a businessman who lived in the Cayman Islands. I barely knew him. I had seen him only twice when I was young. But he knew my mother well. He told me he was getting older. He told me he had no children of his own. He told me he wanted to leave some of his estate to the only family he had left. At first, I thought he meant a few $1,000s. A small piece of land maybe. Nothing life-changing. But when he passed away 2 years later, the documents he left behind changed everything. He left me ownership of several large commercial properties overseas. Properties I didn't even understand at that time. Land that was worth more than anything I could imagine. Business investments arranged by his lawyers. Accounts I didn't even know existed. At first, I froze. I didn't believe it. I didn't trust it. I thought it was some kind of mistake. But it wasn't. Trip by trip, meeting by meeting, document by document, I learned how to manage it. How to grow it. How to keep it safe. I told no one. Not because I wanted to hide wealth. But because I was afraid. Afraid people would treat me differently. Afraid my children would stop trying in their lives. Afraid the world would see me as someone I wasn't. So I kept living simply. I worked part-time at a local daycare. I cooked my meals at home. I wore the same old sweaters I had worn for years. And no one suspected a thing. The secret stayed quiet. Tucked away like a book on the highest shelf. Untouched. Unspoken. And over the next 15 years, the value of everything grew. From millions to hundreds of millions. And then, to billions. I carried a fortune in my name. While wearing shoes with worn-out soles. My children never guessed it. Not even once. Maybe because they never looked. Maybe because they never asked. Maybe because somewhere along the way, we stopped being close. How distance slowly grew in my own home. People think families fall apart suddenly, like a loud crack in the middle of the night. But in my case, it happened slowly, almost gently, like paper tearing a little more every day. At first, I didn't notice it. Maybe because I was busy. Maybe because grief still covered me like a soft blanket. Maybe because I believed silence was better than saying the wrong thing. Whatever the reason was, I didn't see the distance forming. Not until it was already there. My son Michael grew up fast after Daniel passed away. He was only 17, but he stepped into responsibilities like someone much older. He worked part-time after school. He helped me pay bills. He fixed things around the house the way his father used to. But along the way, he became quieter. More serious. More distant. I would ask, "How was your day, Michael?" And he would answer, "Fine," without looking up. I tried to understand him. I tried to be patient. But sometimes, when he walked past me without saying a word, I felt a strange loneliness, the kind that sits in the center of your chest, heavy and warm. Emily, on the other hand, was different. She stayed close to me. She shared every detail of her day, every fear, every dream. But as she got older, even she began to change. The house became quieter. Meals became shorter. Weekends became busier. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I talked too much about the past. Maybe I held on to memories too tightly. Maybe I didn't know how to keep up with the younger generation. I didn't know. I really didn't. But I could feel it. My children were slowly drifting away. And the secret I kept, the wealth I managed in silence, made me afraid to bring anyone closer. Money can build walls even when you never meant for it to. The day my son brought someone home. The first moment I realized my family dynamic was about to change was the day Michael brought home a girl named Samantha Reed. She was polite, warm, with long blonde hair and a smile that seemed gentle enough. Michael introduced her shyly. "Mom, this is Samantha." I smiled and offered my hand. "It's nice to meet you, Samantha." She looked around the house with curious eyes. Not judgmental, just curious. We sat at the dining table where Daniel had once said grace every night. I served chicken casserole, a recipe Emily loved as a child. Michael barely touched his food. Samantha picked at her plate politely. I tried to make small talk, but the conversation felt stiff. Later that night, after Samantha left, Michael came into the kitchen while I washed dishes. "She liked you," he said quietly. "I liked her too," I replied. He nodded, but I could tell he was distracted. "Everything all right?" I asked. He hesitated. Yeah, it's fine." But it wasn't fine. I could see it in his eyes, a kind of worry I didn't understand yet. When he walked away, I felt it again. That soft ache. Like something was shifting in the house. Like I was losing my place little by little. A growing wall between me and Emily. While Michael's world expanded with Samantha, Emily began to spend more time outside too. She joined a study group. Then a volunteer club. Then weekend shifts at a local cafe called River's Brew. At first, I was proud. She was becoming independent. She was learning to live without leaning on me. But then came the small changes. She stopped coming home for lunch. She started closing her bedroom door more often. She laughed less with me and more on her phone. One evening, she came home late and went straight to her room. No hug. No, "Hi, Mom." Just a soft, tired sigh as the door closed behind her. I stood in the hallway staring at her closed door, wondering if she was slipping away, the same way Michael had. I reminded myself. Children grow. Children change. Children build their own lives. But a quiet fear whispered inside me. A fear I didn't tell anyone. What if one day they build a life without me in it? The secret became heavier with time. As the years passed, I continued managing my inheritance quietly. Every few months, I traveled overseas for meetings. I always told my children I was visiting my aunt, or helping an old friend, or attending a training program. Small lies. Soft lies. The kind meant to protect. Sometimes on those trips, I would sit alone in hotel rooms, staring at the city lights outside, wondering if I was doing the right thing. Was I protecting my family? Or pushing them away without knowing? Wealth can feel like a shield. But sometimes it becomes a wall. And I didn't want that wall to stand between me and my children. Yet slowly, painfully, I felt it rising. When Samantha became part of our lives. 2 years after Michael introduced her, Samantha became more comfortable in our home. She would visit often. Help in the kitchen sometimes. Bring small gifts like scented candles or homemade brownies. But despite her kindness, I sensed something between her and Michael, something tense, something strained. One night, I overheard them talking softly in the living room. Samantha said, "You need to talk to her, Michael." Michael replied, "Not now. Mom's not ready for that." I paused in the hallway, confused. What conversation was I not ready for? Why were they worried about telling me something? I stepped back quietly, choosing not to interrupt. I didn't want to appear as someone who listened at doors. But that conversation echoed in my mind for days. What did they want to tell me? Were they planning to move out? Leave the state? Start their life far away? It hurt to think about it. I tried not to imagine the worst. But the human heart is strange. It fills empty spaces with loud fears. Emily's first big mistake. Around that time, Emily turned 19. She was smart, gentle, responsible, but even good children make mistakes. One evening she came home crying. Her hands were shaking. Her voice was trembling. "Mom. I think I messed up." I held her shoulders. "What happened, sweetheart?" She showed me a notice. A late payment from her college. She had missed a deadline. She owed more money than she could handle alone. "I didn't want to bother you," she whispered. "Emily," I said softly, "you can always come to me." She cried harder. Not because of the money. But because she thought she failed. I held her in my arms the way I did when she was a child. I stroked her hair. I whispered comfort. She didn't know that I could have paid her entire college tuition without blinking. She didn't know that I had more resources than she could imagine. She didn't know that money was not the problem. The real problem was the space between us. She had been afraid to ask me for help. Afraid to trouble me. Afraid to burden me. And that broke my heart in a way no amount of money could fix. That night, as she slept on the couch beside me, I looked at her peaceful face and wondered. Had I become so distant that my own daughter felt she had to hide her struggles? Had the lies I told, even the small ones, created a barrier between us? I didn't sleep that night. I just watched her breathe softly and prayed I wouldn't lose her. The moment tension finally showed itself. The real crack in our family started with something small. One Sunday morning, Samantha came over for breakfast. She brought a box of pastries. Michael was in a good mood. Emily sat beside me, humming softly. For a moment, it felt like a normal family morning. Warm. Simple. Peaceful. Then it happened. Samantha looked at me and said gently, "Mrs. Parker, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but Michael thinks you travel too much." Michael's eyes widened. "Samantha," she continued, "he worries about you. He thinks you're hiding something." The room fell silent. Emily looked at me with surprise. Michael looked frustrated. I felt my heart skip. I tried to smile. "I'm not hiding anything," I whispered. But Samantha frowned softly. "Then why do you go away for weeks and never tell them where? They're your children. They worry." Her words were not rude. But they were sharp. Clear. True. Michael added quietly, "Mom, we just want to understand." For the first time in years, my secret felt like a burden I could no longer carry alone. I took a deep breath. Opened my mouth to explain. But then, my phone buzzed. A message from overseas. A private alert from one of my managers. The timing was terrible. The tension grew. Samantha looked at me with suspicion. Michael looked confused. Emily looked worried. And I felt my world shake a little. Lives don't fall apart in a single moment. But sometimes one moment shows you that the cracks have already been growing. The day I realized my family might not know me at all. That night, after everyone left the dining table, I sat alone with the dirty plates and the silence. I replayed Samantha's words in my mind. "He thinks you're hiding something." Was I? Not intentionally. Not with bad meaning. But hiding is hiding, even when the reason is protection. I thought of telling them everything. The property overseas. The businesses. The managers. The accounts. The billions. But then I imagined their faces. Shock. Confusion. Maybe even resentment. A small voice inside me whispered, "You don't belong in their world anymore." I pushed that thought away. But the ache in my chest stayed. And I realized something painful. My children loved me. But they did not know me. Not the real me. Not the woman who built an empire quietly. Not the mother who sacrificed sleep, time, and years of her life to secure their future. Not the widow who kept a promise to her husband even when her own heart was breaking. They knew the version of me I showed them. But they did not know the story behind my silence. And for the first time, I wondered. Would they ever forgive me once they learned the truth? The day everything changed without warning. When I boarded the plane for my overseas trip, I thought I was leaving home for just a few days of meetings. I believed I would return, sit my children down, and finally tell them everything, every truth, every detail, every piece of the life they never knew I lived. But life has a way of changing our plans before we even know it. I did not know that while I was gone, a single moment at home. A single conversation. A single misunderstanding. Would change my family forever. I did not know that this time, silence wouldn't protect anyone. This time, silence would break the one thing I loved most, my connection with my children. And it all began the moment I landed. The strange feeling right from the airport. When I stepped off the plane, I felt uneasy. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't fear. It wasn't panic. Just a quiet heaviness. A soft warning. The kind only a mother feels when something is wrong at home. My phone had several missed calls. Most were from my manager overseas, but 2 were from Emily. Emily rarely called twice unless something truly worried her. I wanted to hear her voice right away, but I had a meeting scheduled just 30 minutes after landing. I told myself I would call her afterward. I told myself everything was fine. But my heart whispered otherwise. A meeting that revealed the first sign of trouble. My manager, Peter Lawson, a tall, serious man in his mid-40s, sat across from me in a small conference room. He adjusted his glasses and spoke calmly. "Mrs. Parker, someone has been asking unusual questions about your holdings. They're trying to access older records, including the ones with your family name." I frowned. Family name? They used my exact name. "Yes," he said. "Your full name." My heart stopped for a moment. "Does anyone outside this office know what I own?" I asked softly. Peter shook his head. "No one except the legal team. But someone clearly heard something, enough to start digging." I didn't speak for several seconds. My fingers trembled against the table. "Do you know who it could be?" I asked. "That's the problem," he said. "We don't." I took a slow breath. "Peter, protect everything. Freeze anything that looks suspicious. I'll deal with this when I return home." He nodded, worry on his face. "We can protect your assets," he said. "But protecting your privacy might be difficult." Privacy. The one thing I had guarded for so long. The one thing that kept my children safe from knowing a truth too heavy for them. And now, someone was trying to break through it. Emily's missed call. After the meeting, my phone vibrated again. A message from Emily. "Mom, please call me as soon as you can. It's important." My stomach tightened. I called immediately. She didn't pick up. I tried again. And again. No answer. Something was wrong. I stared at the phone as the plane lights outside cast long shadows on the airport floor. A voice inside me whispered. "This is the moment you feared. Something is happening at home." I didn't know how right that voice was. When Michael finally answered. After 10 missed attempts, I called Michael. He answered on the fourth ring. His voice was cold. "Mom." Just that. No warmth. No softness. Just one flat word. My heart dropped. "Michael, what happened? Is Emily okay?" Silence for a moment. Then he said sharply, "Where are you?" "I told you," I whispered. "I had a trip." He cut me off. "Mom, we know you weren't visiting a friend. We know you weren't caring for anyone. We know you lied." The word lied hit me like a slap I wasn't expecting. I sat down slowly on a chair beside the window. "Michael, please tell me what happened." His voice was angry, but underneath it, I heard hurt. "We found something," he said. "Something in your room." My breath stopped. What did you find?" He didn't hesitate. "A letter. An old document. Something about overseas property. Something with your name on it." My skin went cold. I whispered, "You went through my things." He didn't apologize. He didn't even hesitate. "We were worried about you. We thought you might be sick or in trouble. We thought you might be hiding something dangerous. And instead," he continued, voice shaking, "we found out you've been hiding a whole other life." The document they found. The document Michael was talking about was the original letter from Richard, the man who had left me everything. It was a simple letter. Yellowed paper. Old ink. Gentle handwriting. A letter that explained how much he wanted to help me. How he wanted Daniel's family to be safe. How much he left in my name. That letter was my starting point. My reminder of responsibility. My quiet secret. And now it was in my children's hands. I swallowed, trying to speak. But my voice came out weak. Michael, it's not what you think. Oh really? He said sharply. Because it looks like you've been lying to us for 15 years. I felt tears gather. I wasn't lying. I was trying to protect. He cut me off again. Don't say you were protecting us. Don't do that. His voice cracked. You think we're children. You think we can't handle the truth. You think we're not part of your life. My heart ached. I didn't want money to change us, I whispered. He let out a bitter laugh. Money didn't change us, Mom. Secrets did. Samantha's voice in the background. Then I heard a soft voice behind him. Samantha. She whispered something like, just tell her. But her tone wasn't angry, it was concerned. Michael sighed heavily. Mom, listen. I'm going to say this once. We're coming over tonight. We're going to talk about everything, every secret, every trip, every document. I can't talk now, I whispered. I'm overseas, Michael. He paused. Then his voice lowered, full of disappointment. Of course you are. The call ended. I stared at the screen, feeling my chest tighten. My children knew. They had found pieces of the truth. And they were hurt. Not because of the money. Not because of the property. But because I never trusted them with the truth. A night of no sleep. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat by the hotel window, looking at the dark sky over the city. My hands shook every time I replayed Michael's voice in my head. Money didn't change us, Mom. Secrets did. He was right. I never wanted to lie. I never wanted to push them away. I never wanted money to build a wall between us. But in trying to protect them, that's exactly what I did. Around 3 a.m., I finally fell asleep for an hour. But I woke up with a start, heart pounding. A message from Emily. Mom. I'm scared. Please come home. Tears filled my eyes. I packed immediately. I didn't wait for morning. I didn't wait for another meeting. I changed my flight to the earliest one available. My children needed me. And I needed them more than I needed anything else. The flight home, where my fears became real. On the plane, I stared at the clouds outside the window. Every mile that brought me closer to home brought a deeper fear. What if they are angry? What if they feel betrayed? What if they stop trusting me completely? What if this secret destroys everything I spent 20 years trying to protect? I clutched my hands together, whispering to myself. I'm doing this for them. Everything I did was for them. But the truth is, I wasn't sure anymore. Maybe I did it for myself. For my fear. For my wound. For the grief I never healed from when Daniel passed away. And now, everything was falling apart. Returning home to silence. When I walked into the house, the air felt heavy. Too still. Too quiet. Too tense. Emily sat on the couch, curled into herself. Her eyes were red. Michael stood near the window with his hands on his hips. He barely looked at me. Samantha sat beside Emily, her arm around her gently. None of them spoke. For a few seconds, the silence grew loud around me. I finally whispered, Emily. Michael. I'm home. No one moved. Michael finally turned toward me. His face wasn't angry. It was hurt. Deeply hurt. Tell us the truth, Mom, he said quietly. No excuses. No stories. No more hiding. Emily wiped her tears softly. Please, Mom. Please. My heart felt like it was breaking in real time. I sat down slowly. My hands trembled. This was the moment I had feared. And the moment I needed. At the same time, I looked at my children, my whole world, and whispered. I'm going to tell you everything. The confession that changed our family forever. I told them everything. From the day Daniel passed away. To the moment Richard reached out. To the inheritance. To the lawyers. To the properties overseas. To the billions I grew quietly over the years. I told them how afraid I was of money changing them. How afraid I was of pressure, greed, expectations. How afraid I was that people would treat them differently. How afraid I was that they might stop believing in hard work, or in themselves. I told them how lonely I felt. How heavy the secret became. How guilty I was every time they asked where I went. I didn't justify. I didn't defend. I didn't make excuses. I told the truth. The way a mother tells the truth. When she has run out of time. To hide behind protection. The room was silent the whole time. Emily cried quietly. Michael clenched his jaw. Samantha looked stunned. When I finished speaking, I finally said the words that had lived inside me for years. I wasn't trying to hide wealth. I was trying to hide pain. Emily sobbed harder. She whispered, Mom, why didn't you trust us? I felt my heart shatter. I trusted you with my life, I whispered. But I didn't trust myself to share something so big. Michael looked at me with eyes full of tears he didn't want to show. You should have trusted us to love you anyway. My breath caught in my throat. Because he was right. The moment that truly broke me. Then came the words I wasn't prepared for. Michael whispered, Mom. I don't know how to feel right now. I don't even know who you are anymore. Emily sobbed into her hands. And in that moment, my greatest fear became real. Not losing my secret. Not losing my privacy. Not losing my wealth. Losing them. The room was quiet, except for Emily's soft crying. I whispered, barely breathing. I'm still your mother. I'm still the same person. I'm still the woman who raised you. Michael looked away. Emily whispered, but you lived a whole life we never saw. I closed my eyes. And in that moment, I realized something painful. When you live in silence for too long, your silence becomes a stranger your family has to meet. And they weren't ready to meet her. A pause that felt like a lifetime. After my confession, no one spoke for a long time. Michael walked to the kitchen. Emily wiped her face again and again. Samantha lowered her eyes. I sat there, alone in my own living room, feeling smaller than I ever felt in my life. I thought telling the truth would bring us closer. Instead, it created the deepest silence I had ever felt. And in that silence, I understood the true turning point. This wasn't the moment they learned about my wealth. This wasn't the moment they learned about the property. This wasn't the moment they learned about my travels. This was the moment my children learned that I was human, flawed, afraid, and capable of making mistakes that hurt the people I loved most. This was the moment everything changed. This was the moment our family broke. So one day, maybe, it could heal. Resolution. The days after the truth came out. The morning after I told my children everything, the house felt different. It wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It wasn't tense in the way people expect. It was quiet. A deep, heavy quiet that felt like a soft fog spreading through every room. I woke up early, the way I always did, but the air felt colder. Even the sunlight coming through the curtains felt unfamiliar, like the house no longer recognized me. This was still my home. But it wasn't the same anymore. And neither was I. Michael's silence hurt more than his words. Michael didn't speak to me for 2 days. He didn't shout. He didn't argue. He didn't blame. He just didn't speak. He moved through the house like a visitor staying somewhere temporary, polite, distant, careful not to start anything. He cooked quietly, cleaned up after himself, kept his door closed. That door bothered me more than anything else. Every time I passed his room, I wanted to knock. I wanted to sit with him and explain. I wanted to tell him how proud I was of the man he had become. But I also wanted to respect his space. I didn't want to force him into a conversation he wasn't ready for. Sometimes I heard him whispering to Samantha on the phone. His voice sounded tired. Worn out. Bruised emotionally. He wasn't angry at my wealth. He was hurt by my silence. And a part of me wondered if a simple truth, revealed too late, could hurt more than any lie. Emily tried, but she was hurting too. Emily wasn't like Michael. She couldn't hide her feelings behind a quiet face. She tried to smile at me. She tried to talk normally. She tried to pretend everything was fine. But her eyes told the truth every time. They were softer. Wetter. Heavier. One afternoon, she came into the kitchen while I washed dishes. She stood there silently for a long moment before whispering, "Mom. I still love you." My eyes filled with tears instantly. "I love you too, sweetheart," I whispered back. She nodded slowly. "But it's going to take me a little time. I'm trying to understand everything. I'm trying to accept it. I'm trying to make sense of who you are." Her words were not meant to hurt, but they pierced me. "Emily, I'm still your mother." She looked down at her hands. "I know," she whispered. "But you're also someone else too. Someone I didn't know existed." Her voice cracked. "I feel like you lived 2 lives, Mom, and I only got to know one of them." A tear slipped down her cheek. And for the first time, I realized something painful. It wasn't the wealth that broke her heart. It was the distance created by years of small secrets. I pulled her gently into my arms. She cried softly against my shoulder, and I held her the way I did when she was a baby. We didn't speak. We just stayed there, holding on to each other, not as mother and daughter trying to fix something, but as 2 human beings trying to understand one another again. The loneliness that comes after the truth. Even though the truth was out, I had never felt more alone. Not because my children rejected me. Not because they didn't love me. But because I didn't know how to live without the wall I had built for so long. For 15 years, that wall was my comfort. My shield. My protection. Now it was gone. And behind it stood a woman I barely recognized. A woman who had carried too much. A woman who had forgotten how to share her burdens. A woman who loved deeply but feared deeply too. I walked around the house differently, noticing old pictures on the walls, old memories on shelves, old laughter trapped in objects that no longer felt warm. Everything looked familiar, but nothing felt familiar. I kept telling myself the same sentence again and again. They need time. Give them time. And so I tried to be patient. For them. For myself. For our family. The town began to whisper more loudly. Just as things inside the house became fragile. Things outside the house started shifting too. One day, I went to the local grocery store. A woman named Karen, who had known my family for years, approached me with a cheerful smile that seemed a little too curious. "Linda. Heard you've been traveling quite a bit lately. Business, right?" I froze. Business. Someone had told her something. I forced a smile. Just some work. Nothing big. Oh, she said, leaning closer. I heard you own property out of the country now. Must be exciting. My heart almost stopped. Property. Overseas. The rumor wasn't harmless anymore. It was growing roots. I laughed softly, pretending to be confused. Oh, Karen, people say the funniest things. But she didn't look convinced. Neither did the cashier. Or the woman standing behind me. Or the man who stared at me a little too long as I walked out. My privacy. My carefully protected quiet life. Was slipping out of my hands. If the town found out everything, if someone guessed the truth, my children would be dragged into something they weren't emotionally ready for. And I had already hurt them enough. The emotional distance between siblings. The tension didn't stay between me and my children. It began to form between Michael and Emily too. One evening, I overheard them talking in the hallway. Emily whispered, "She didn't do it to hurt us." Michael replied, "It doesn't matter." She still lied. She was scared, Emily said. "We're her children," Michael snapped softly. What was she scared of? That we'd change, Emily whispered. That we'd rely on the money. Or stop trying. Michael sighed heavily. Well, now I feel like I failed her anyway. His voice cracked. She thought we couldn't handle the truth. She thought we'd become greedy. She thought we weren't strong enough. Emily whispered, "No, Michael. She didn't think that." Then what? He asked. She thought she would lose us. Silence. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. Emily was right. I did fear losing them. But the painful irony was, in trying so hard not to lose them, I ended up losing pieces of them anyway. The first small step toward healing. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Samantha came to the house alone. She knocked softly and smiled gently when I opened the door. "Hi, Mrs. Parker." I forced a smile. "Hello, Samantha. Can I talk to you?" she asked. I nodded slowly and let her in. We sat at the same dining table where everything fell apart weeks earlier. She took a deep breath. "I just want to say, I'm sorry." I blinked. "For what?" "For pushing," she said. "For asking questions at the wrong time. For making things harder. I didn't understand everything then. I understand more now." Her voice was sincere. Soft. A little shaky. I shook my head gently. "You didn't do anything wrong. You cared. You were trying to help." She nodded. Then she whispered something that surprised me. "You're not alone, Mrs. Parker. Please don't let this break you." My eyes filled with tears. Samantha reached for my hand. "Michael is hurting," she said. "But he loves you. He just doesn't know how to express himself right now." "I know," I whispered. "He needs time," she said. "I'll give him all the time he needs," I whispered back. She squeezed my hand gently. And for the first time since my confession, I felt a small light returning to my chest. Not hope. Not forgiveness. Just a start. A tiny step toward rebuilding something that had been cracked for too long. Emily's wedding preparations bring new emotions. Amid all the tension, life continued. Especially for Emily. She was engaged now, to a young man named Brandon Hayes, a kind, patient man who adored her deeply. Her wedding was approaching in a few months. And even though our relationship was fragile, she still brought me into the preparations. One day she came to my room holding a stack of bridal magazines. "Mom," she said softly, can you help me pick a dress style? The simple question made my heart swell with warmth. Of course, I whispered. We sat on the floor together, flipping through pages. She pointed to lace sleeves. I pointed to soft satin. She pointed to longer trains. I pointed to delicate veils. We talked gently. Softly. Carefully. Like two people learning each other all over again. Not every moment was comfortable. Sometimes the silence between us stretched too long. Sometimes I could feel her thinking about the secret, the money, the new reality. But she stayed. She tried. She kept letting me be part of her world. And in small ways, that healed me. The day Emily broke down in my arms. One evening, Emily burst into my room crying. She fell into my arms, shaking. Mom. I don't know how to handle all this, she sobbed. The wedding. The changes. The truth. Everything feels too big. I held her tightly. Sweetheart, I whispered, stroking her hair, you don't have to handle it alone. But I don't want my wedding to feel heavy, she cried. I don't want it to feel like our family is falling apart. Her voice cracked. I want you there, Mom. I want you happy. I want us okay. I closed my eyes. I want the same thing, I whispered. Then she said something that shattered me and healed me at the same time. Mom, don't disappear again. Please. Stay close this time. I kissed her forehead. I'm not going anywhere, I whispered. I'm right here. And I'm not keeping anything from you again. The slow healing between me and Michael. Michael took longer. He didn't cry. He didn't talk much. He didn't seek comfort. He just stood at a distance, watching, thinking, processing. But slowly, small moments began to appear. One evening, he came into the kitchen while I cooked. He stood there quietly for a long moment before saying, "Smells good." It wasn't much. But it was something. Another time, he knocked on my door and said, "I'm going to the store. Do you need anything?" Again, not much. But it was more than silence. And then, one night, he came into the living room and sat beside me on the couch. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then finally, "Mom. I'm not ready to talk about everything. But I don't want to lose you either." I felt tears fill my eyes. "You won't lose me," I whispered. "Not now. Not ever." He looked straight ahead. "Just give me time." "I will," I whispered. That was the beginning of our healing. Slow. Quiet. But real. The moment I realized something beautiful. One morning, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The sun was rising. Birds were singing softly. The air felt gentle again. And in that moment, for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt something warm in my chest. Not joy. Not certainty. Not complete peace. But something close. Something like healing. Because even though the road ahead was long, even though the wounds were fresh, even though trust needed time to rebuild, my children were still here. Still near. Still trying. And I was still their mother. Still loving them. Still ready to rebuild brick by brick, moment by moment. I whispered into the morning light. Maybe this is our new beginning. Ending. A new beginning on the day my daughter married. The morning of Emily's wedding arrived quiet and gentle, like the world was taking a soft breath before something beautiful. I woke up before dawn. Not because I was nervous. But because my heart felt full in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. For months, healing had moved through our home slowly, like warm sunlight touching each corner 1 inch at a time. There were still scars, still soft hurts, still moments when silence stretched too long. But there was love too. And love, even when cracked, can grow again. I stood by the window watching the early light spread across the neighborhood. I thought about every mistake I made. Every fear I carried. Every silence I hid behind. But I also thought about how far we had come. Michael was speaking to me again, not perfectly, not constantly, but honestly. Emily had forgiven me in the way daughters forgive their mothers, not all at once, but piece by piece. Even Samantha became someone I trusted quietly, like a daughter I didn't know I needed. Life wasn't perfect. But it was healing. And that was enough. A moment I'll never forget. Emily knocked softly on my door before the ceremony. When I opened it, she stood there in her wedding gown, soft lace, gentle sleeves, a veil that flowed like a quiet whisper behind her. She looked like a memory and a dream at the same time. "Mom," she said, "can you help me with my veil?" Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with love. I stepped closer and adjusted the delicate lace on her shoulders. My fingers shook slightly as I touched her hair, the same soft hair I used to braid when she was a child running barefoot through the backyard. She looked at me through the mirror. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. I smiled. A real smile. The kind that comes from forgiveness, both given and received. "I'm more than okay," I whispered. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." She turned and hugged me, her arms wrapping tightly around my shoulders. "I'm glad you're here, Mom," she said. "I'm glad you're part of this." Tears gathered in my eyes. "Thank you for letting me," I whispered. And I meant every word. Walking beside her, not in front. Emily chose to walk down the aisle with Brandon's father, honoring tradition, but she asked me to walk beside her for the first few steps, just before the doors opened. "Just the first part," she said. "The part that matters to me." So we walked together, two women who had hurt each other, healed together, and learned to understand one another again. The music began. The doors opened. And I let go of her hand gently. Not because I wanted to. But because she was ready to step into a new life. I took my seat. The sunlight coming through the windows made everything look like gold. And for a moment, I felt Daniel beside me, calm, proud, smiling at the daughter we raised with every piece of our hearts. A quiet conversation with my son. After the ceremony, while guests gathered around Emily and Brandon, I stepped outside for some fresh air. The evening breeze felt soft on my face, carrying the distant laughter of family and friends. Michael joined me quietly. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood beside me, hands in his pockets. Then he whispered. "You did good, Mom." I looked at him, surprised. He didn't look angry anymore. Just thoughtful. Older somehow. He continued, "I'm still figuring out how I feel. But I know you tried your best. And I know you love us." My eyes filled with tears. "Michael. I always loved you. Even when I failed. Even when I was scared." He nodded slowly. "I know." Then, for the first time in a long time, he reached out and hugged me. A simple hug. But it felt like the beginning of a new chapter. Letting go of fear. That night, after the wedding ended and I returned home, I sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet again, but not heavy. Not lost. Just peaceful. I looked around at the walls, the photos, the memories tied into the furniture. So much life had happened here. So many secrets. So much silence. So much love. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid of the truth anymore. I knew the world might find out someday. I knew my children now carried a burden I tried to shield them from. I knew nothing about the future was certain. But I also knew something more important. My family was stronger than my fears. And love, even cracked, even tested, was still love. The final lesson I learned. As I turned off the lights and walked toward my bedroom, a soft realization settled in my heart. It's not the secrets that destroy families. It's the fear of sharing them. I spent so many years trying to protect my children from a truth I didn't trust myself to carry. But in the end, they didn't want money. They didn't want property. They didn't want wealth. They wanted me. Just me. Their mother. The woman who cooked their meals. The woman who comforted them at night. The woman who cried quietly and loved loudly. The woman who tried, even when she didn't always succeed. And that was enough. I whispered into the quiet house. Family is not built on what we hide. Family is built on what we share, and what we choose to heal together. And with that thought, I finally slept peacefully. Knowing the truth had not destroyed us, but brought us closer in the way only honesty and love can.